Hello, I'm Porschia Parker Griffin, and I want to welcome you to the Career 101 podcast, a place for ambitious professionals and seasoned executives who want an edge in their career. We're talking about all of the things you were never taught or told when it comes to career growth, development, and change. Now, let's get into it. Today, we are talking about Accountability 101, creating accountability plans with Xan Hong. Xan Hong, the CEO and co-founder of OnTrack, is a startup veteran with over 15 years of experience. During that time, he has generated over $10 million in revenue in a variety of industries. He previously raised $800,000 for one of his ventures. Xan is currently the CEO and co-founder of a tech startup, and he scouts for a venture firm in the UK that invests exclusively in no-code startups. Xan also hosts a show on Clubhouse where founders pitch to angel investors for investments. And he also advises other startups and even helped his 8-year-old daughter build her ice cream truck tracking app using the no-code platform Bubble. Hi, Xan. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. You have a very interesting bio. So I'm excited to have you with us to discuss accountability and creating accountability plans. But first, we want to know a little bit more about you. So tell me about 7-year-old Xan.
I've got to think way back for this. So I grew up in a family with two parents that were immigrants, first generation. And so they were very strict. So it was always kind of a struggle between trying to adapt to, the American life and kind of the expectations of my parents. But, one thing that was good from that is they held a very high expectation as far as achieving academically. And so, of all the things, I remember a lot of bad, but at the end of the day, I have a lot to thank, my parents for that. But yeah, I think that element of being a kid of immigrants' parents, I think has a lot to do with kind of my early year, experience.
Mm-hmm. I've heard some of my friends who their parents were immigrants tell me that like achievement was a really big deal for them. So sounds like that was probably the case for you too.
100%, yeah.
So what did you want to be when you grew up, Xan?
That's a good question. But what I can tell you is being a doctor was kind of what we were raised to want to be. So, my mom's dad was a doctor. And so that was, I kind of grew up with pre-med as kind of my end goal. So I didn't really necessarily, I don't remember anything in particular. Oh, my dad was an engineer. So at one point, I think I wanted to be an engineer as well. But those are the two things I kind of remember, at the top of my list.
Okay. So tell me about your first job.
So right after college, I had two things I did right after college. So I had been doing medical research I went to University of Pennsylvania. So I did some medical research at their medical school. And again, the goal was to go to medical school at the time. And then I also ran track at the University of Penn. So I actually did some personal training on the side. So I did both for a period of time. But those were my first two jobs. But then I guess my first corporate job was for a medical education company where we developed educational events for physicians that were sponsored by the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. So tell me about perhaps some highlights or pivotal moments in your career before, I guess, you went the entrepreneurial route and started opening your own businesses.
Yes, I had to think back on that one, but actually one of them came up the other day because I got into a somewhat political discussion on Facebook and this experience that I had kind of came up. And so as I was trying to figure out what to do, I didn't get into medical school. I got waitlisted twice. I didn't get in. So I was trying to figure out what to do. So I went to graduate school of education. And during that time, I student taught at a public high school, which actually no longer exists, in West Philadelphia. And not intellectually, but physically and mentally, that was definitely probably one of the hardest years I had. Just, growing up in a suburban, community and then seeing, kind of what these kids, in West Philadelphia had to deal with. It really opened my eyes. And even though, I didn't teach after that, it's an experience that has affected me, 20 years later, maybe not even just from a career perspective, but just a personal perspective. again, it hasn't necessarily affected me from a personal perspective. I'm sorry. It's something that didn't necessarily affect me just from a career perspective, but also from a personal perspective. And just so many of my views from a political standpoint have been affected by that experience. And I think it's one that not a lot of people have had, but it's one I value quite a bit just because I think it is unique. And I think it gives me a certain level of appreciation for what I have, but also, a need to kind of help others as well.
Yeah. And it sounds like that desire to help other people has kind of come out in all of the work that you're doing with startups and all of that. So that's kind of maybe a segue there. So, Xan, what would you say were some of your biggest career challenges before you started your own companies?
I mean, I think I touched on it a little bit is, I think I kind of grew up with this one mindset. And when that didn't go that way, I kind of felt lost for a while. Right. And so, I tried a couple different things out and I tried the education route. And I think the education route was more like pressure from parents to be like, okay, so you've got to do something. So let's just choose something and versus really doing something that I wanted to do. And so I think really that the challenge was just not knowing what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for sharing that, Xan, because a lot of our clients feel like they have to have it all together and, have this career path all planned out. And I would say the vast majority of people, you don't necessarily get that even in college. And so
Sure.
We actually do some speaking for universities and whatnot around different career focused topics, because I've even learned in networking with universities and from my own experience of going to college, a lot of their like career services or career development departments, they don't have time to really sit with students and get to the root of, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
I think some of the large universities, like where I went, you might be able to get a 20-minute time slot with a career counselor. And
Yeah.
I mean, who knows how much is going to get solved in that 20 minutes. But, I talk to a lot of people at various ages and in various generations who are still trying to answer that question. So for you, how did you get some clarity around what avenues you wanted to pursue?
So trying to keep the story quick, but it was kind of accidental. It wasn't really completely my choice, but I think it's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. So the company I was working for, the pharmaceutical marketing company, was acquired. And I remember this very clearly. We got herded like sheep into a conference room. There was about 60 of us that got herded in. And, basically they did this presentation and it was an org chart. And the 60 people in the room weren't really on that org chart. And so we got laid off. And, what was interesting is, they didn't want us to, tell our clients. I was an account manager at the time. But, my thing is once you lay me off, you can't really tell me what to do anymore. And so, I called my client and basically what happened is they said, we trust you. And so they basically basically brought the business over to me. And all of a sudden I was kind of going from employee to entrepreneur over the course of like a couple of weeks. Right. And it was not a small contract. And so I basically had to figure stuff out on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
And but candidly, entrepreneurship has been the right place for me. I'm not sure without that kind of external push, maybe not, would I have made that plunge if I didn't have, kind of the safety net pulled out from under me. I don't know the answer to that, but I haven't gone back since. And I'm, it's been a great decision for me and I'm very much unemployable now. So.
Yeah. And that I've heard that, from a few of our clients. And I think that's a great transition into entrepreneurship when you have that one large client that you can get started with to kind of make that transition.
Yeah.
So we're gonna dig more into your entrepreneurial background, but I want to start with the basics.
Okay.
Because this also, speaks a lot to entrepreneurship. What is your definition of accountability?
Yeah. So accountability, I'm going to pull in, a couple things here, but it really kind of is at one of the core tenets of why I started my startup. But being accountable to someone is, someone having an expectation on you. And the reason why that's powerful is, studies show that if you share a goal with somebody else, you're actually higher to achieve it, more likely to achieve that goal. But more importantly, if you share that goal with someone that you respect, that actually has a bigger impact. And I think the reason why is you now have kind of that external force on you where it's not only, you're not only doing it for yourself, but you're doing it because you don't want to disappoint that person that you respect, how they think about you. And so really accountability is having kind of an external motivation for achieving it. And it's in the form of someone expecting you to achieve that, and also kind of being there to help push you, guide you, provide motivation, be your cheerleader, whatever it is that you need to kind of get you over the finish line on that.
Mm-hmm. I love the point you made about external motivation. I think that is a really, really good way to put it when it comes to accountability. And I think you started kind of answering this question, but I want to dig deeper. Why do you think accountability is so important?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's what I said, right? Is, a lot of studies show that if you share your goal, with anyone, right, you're more likely to achieve it. And I think it's the same reason that, now you've made it real. You've got people kind of checking in like, oh, how's that going? Right. Like it takes some, kahunas to do that, because, it's easier to not tell anyone if you fail than no one knows about it. Right. And so that's a much safer way to do it. But once you start putting it out there, it's real. And now you feel, I always tell people I ran track in college, and some of my best races were when I was in the outside lane when I couldn't see anybody. And so I did that because you're running scared. Right. And that's a little bit what it is now you put it out there and those questions are going to come. And now you've got that extra push that if you don't feel like someone's chasing, you may not kind of have that extra kind of gear. And so I think it's really just sometimes, I'll do stuff like that and put it out there. I've had so many businesses and sometimes I'll put it out there and people like a lot of them fail, right? But sometimes just putting it out there and saying, here's what I'm going to do, just gives you the motivation to take the next step. And I think that's really what is so powerful about it is sharing it. And having someone else have a level of expectation on you, I think is just a great way to just keep that extra, layer of motivation that you wouldn't necessarily have if it's just you by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really appreciate the point. You made a lot of great points, but I really appreciate the one that you mentioned about having other business ideas that might not have been deemed successful. I was doing research years ago, and I think they said like the average entrepreneur has had like 3 or 4 businesses that have quote unquote failed or not been as successful as they wanted them to be before they get their one that is. And so I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they put that pressure on themselves and they kind of give up because they think, whether it be talking to other people or what they see on social media, but they think everything is supposed to be a success and an instant success at that. Yeah. Thank you for reiterating that. So Xan, many of the professionals and executives in our community are interested in improving their level of accountability to reach their goals. So how do you recommend professionals and executives really create an accountability plan?
So I think this kind of is a key piece of kind of the motivation between, why I started the platform, was that I did a lot of research. I also did a lot of experimentation on my own. And I kind of learned what kind of increases the chances of someone achieving a goal, right? And so some of the things that kind of came up were, the importance of using a SMART goal, using something that's, creating a goal that's measurable, time-based, specific, right? Breaking that goal down into tiny pieces, down to what do I have to do every day to achieve this goal? And then because it's a measurable goal, having a way to track that progress. And so I say all that to say that to achieve a goal, you can't just have the goal, you need to have a very specific action plan mapped out day by day. What do I need to do on a regular basis to achieve it, right? Once you set the goal, you no longer focus on the goal. You focus on the individual tasks that you need to achieve that goal. And so I say that because I think that's the foundation of the accountability plan, right? You can't just have an accountability partner without that action plan kind of being the foundation. And so I think to really have a successful accountability plan, I think you need to one, like I said, set that SMART goal, B, create that specific action plan. And then from there, pick that accountability partner. And again, kind of what I talked about earlier, like someone that you care about what they think about you, right? Because that's going to be part of the motivation. And from there, a lot of studies actually show this is you then want to meet with that person regularly so that you can go through and track, this is what we were trying to do. Did we do it? If not, why didn't we do it? Do we then have to make some adjustments to the plan? And then from there, let's make a, kind of a target for that next meeting, right? And then from there, you can go to that next meeting and do the same thing where it's like, okay, did we achieve it? Did we not? Why not? Right? And then kind of repeating that process. But I think, again, having that specific plan that everyone can agree to ahead of time, that to me is the key. And then the accountability partner isn't necessarily holding you to the goal. They're holding you to the action plan rather than, the goal. The goal is the result of having a good action plan and then sticking to that action plan consistently. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I think you made a lot of really vital points there. I liked what you said about picking the accountability partner. So I'm a certified coach, as you know, and I think a lot of times coaches serve as accountability partners for people,
Great.
but it doesn't necessarily have to be a coach. It can be someone else in your network. One of the things I talk to our clients about a lot is creating a career support system. So it's not just your family and your friends. We know that your friends and family can be great, but a lot of times they're biased and they have their own expectations for you and their own ideas on how far they think, you can make it and all of that. And so I think that can kind of cloud the process for people. And I just like to share that because sometimes people think, oh yeah, I've got my sister, I've got my cousin, and they're my accountability buddy. And I really liked what you said about someone you respect. And of course, you probably respect your friends and family, but there's another layer to that. And I usually say, is this person unbiased, right? Are they not, financially or emotionally invested to the point that you are in it? So I really, really like that point about picking the right accountability partner, which I think is
and I totally agree with it. That kind of unbiasedness, I think I totally agree with that. Yeah.
And then also what you said about the partner holding you to the action plan, not necessarily the goal. That's really important because a lot of times people are just thinking about the goal and the outcome, but it's really about the actions that lead to that, right? And so, a great plan, yes, will get you to success, but sometimes if you're working the plan and you're not getting where you want to be, the idea is to go back and rework the plan. And it doesn't mean that, you're dumb or there's something wrong with you. It just means that the plan needs to be reworked. And I think sometimes people quit on themselves when they're like, hey, I'm doing this action plan and I'm not getting the result,
Yeah.
So I really like your distinction there about holding you to the plan. So Xan, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see people make with their accountability plans?
Well, most of the time it's because they don't make one, right? So I think that's really number one. And I think my experience has been a couple things. I think one is, I think the SMART goal piece is important because it's the specificity that's so important. I think if you don't start with a specific goal, first of all, and make it measurable, then how do you know if you've achieved it, right? And so what we've seen that's been so effective is when you set kind of that specific plan, the specific goal, and you can clearly measure your progress towards that goal, right? When you start to see progress, that gives you confidence, that gives you motivation, and that makes you more motivated to continue that plan. Right. And so the problem is a lot of people, like you said, just give up on the plan when, too early. But if you set it up in a way where you get these small wins early and often, that gives you a great, that's the endorphin rush. Right. And so you're like, oh my gosh, this is working. Let's keep doing it. Right. And if you don't set it up that way, then you don't see those small wins. Then that's, I think, when people give up too early. So I think number one is not having the specific plan, not the specific goal, and then also not setting up these little small wins along the way that give you that motivation to keep going, keep pushing. That's really been, I think, kind of things that I've seen in myself and others where they haven't kind of hit what they wanted to.
The Career 101 podcast is brought to you by Fly High Coaching, where we help our clients soar to their full potential. More and more professionals and executives are setting out to achieve their career goals. But without the right support, it can be difficult, if not impossible. Whether you need career coaching, interview coaching, or a professional resume, we're here to help. Check us out on our website, fly-highcoaching.com. Yeah, I think you're right. I think all of those things lead to people giving up. Like,
yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
Great. So, Xan, tell us more about On Track and how people can use it to help them with their accountability.
Sure. No. So really, it's all the pieces that we've talked about so far, right? So kind of the the origin story behind On Track is I had the project that I mentioned to you that I had raised money for. Took a long time. I won't talk about that. Took a long time to raise 800K. Finally did it, and the business ended up failing. And then right along that time, my father, who I hadn't spoken to for close to 10 years, passed away before we could go out and see him. And so I actually experienced quite a bit of depression during that time. And so I wanted to get myself out. So I actually set a lot of goals during that time. And so I did a lot of research, and, all the things I talked about is kind of what I learned is kind of what increases your chances of achieving a goal, right? And so when I looked at kind of ways to support the goals that I had, all the tools were like, okay, what's your goal? And I'm like, you would put it in, and then it was like, okay, let us know when you get there. And it was kind of like, well, I want to know how to get there, right? And so I wanted someone to kind of help me kind of map out all those tiny steps, and I couldn't find that. And so really, I created originally On Track. I've got 2 co-founders now, but I took all the things I learned about achieving a goal and reverse engineered it into a content platform. And so, On Track is a content platform, and the content is called a Smart Track. And a Smart Track is really a step-by-step action plan to achieve a specific goal, right? And so content creators can create these plans that end users can, enroll in, connect their calendar, and actually have the entire process. We break the goals up into milestones. And so basically what happens is the end user can have a milestone scheduled on their calendar, and then they can kind of mark tasks complete. They can share their progress with an accountability partner to do exactly what we talked about, is hold them accountable to that plan. Are you doing all the things that you're committing to? If so, great. If not, why not? And so I think what we're trying to do is really, our mission statement is to simplify the process of achieving a goal. And we're trying to kind of work with content creators to create content in such a way that helps the end user kind of incorporate all the things we talked about, having a specific action plan, chunking it down into smaller pieces, sharing their progress with an accountability partner. We design content in such a way that really facilitates all those processes kind of inherently. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I want to let everyone listening know that, it might be easy for you to go and look at this, because Xan's team, they have a great website. And I don't know, some people are visual. To me,
Yeah.
I think this would, when they go and they take a look at your website, this will also kind of help them understand the flow of kind of how they can use the smart tracks to really make sure that they're sticking to their accountability plan and taking those actions. So you started a little bit with telling us these things, but let's say, someone goes and they take a look at your website and they definitely want to start with some smart tracks. What have you found are some best practices when kind of using smart tracks on your platform?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question and another question, because it's essentially a two-sided marketplace, right? Because we're also looking for subject matter experts to create smart tracks, right? And so actually, let me just address that really quickly, because we've seen some challenges there, because I think a lot of people don't create and stick to a specific action plan because it's hard, right? Like, it's hard to do. Like, it's easier to kind of create content that just talks about this is how you do it without actually going into the nitty gritty and reverse engineering. Like, what do you actually physically have to do day by day to do that? And so that's actually been one of the challenges. And so what we've been seeing is we've had to work with some of these content creators to help them kind of do that, right? And it's not easy. And then, to answer your other question, right? So for the end users of the smart tracks, I think it's kind of, you start with one, right? It's easy to kind of, oh, that's interesting, and try and do a bunch of them, but really just start with one. Like I said, the best thing is to kind of integrate your calendar. Right now, we only integrate with Google Calendar, and just pick something that you really just want to do. And the idea is to really simplify that process where the smart track has done the heavy lifting of the how, right? And then I would say that the last piece is to go ahead and share that, invite an accountability partner to that journey, so they can kind of track your progress along the way. So I would say, start with one, and then, incorporate the accountability partner, whether it's a coach or someone else, or a mentor, or someone, like you said, that you respect and you want to, again, you care about what they think about whether you are sticking to your plan or not. And so I think those are all the things I would recommend.
Wow. So I think you made a lot of really, really important notes there. So yes, I think that breaking down your goals into these action plans, so into a smart track, is harder than it seems, right?
Yeah.
And so to your point about content creators and really helping them to do that with your platform, I think that is so important. On my nerdy side, Xan, you know that I'm doing a master's degree, and in my program, part of what we dig into is curriculum development and training, and so how to really try to get the results that you want. Because to your point, it's not about talking at somebody and hoping that they pick up the information and know how to create their action plan from that, right?
Exactly.
There are so many steps that I think you and your team, I know, are really good at pulling out and helping people to get to. So one thing, Xan, that I'm not sure of, because I know you guys have made some changes to your platform. Let's say somebody comes with their own goal, right? So they have their own goal. Maybe, some of our clients, some of the goals that we get is, they might want to find a new job in a certain amount of time, or they might want to start a side business in a certain amount of time. If they have their own goal, can they come to On Track and create a smart track for that? Or is it just kind of the set different goals that you already have like plugged into the platform?
What I would say is they could do that. I guess, and not to turn anyone away, but just being honest here, I think if they're trying to create their own action plan, it would take some time to build that smart track. And it might be more, if they're trying to do their own action plan, it might make more sense to do something like a Google Sheets, right? I think the power of a smart track is if we have content creators that are subject matter experts in different areas where they can provide the framework of how do I do this, right? If someone has no idea how to achieve that goal, the vision, the long-term vision is to have all these subject matter experts create these smart tracks where someone can go browse and look for how do I find my first job? How do I optimize, search engine optimize my site or whatever it might be, or how do I lose X amount of pounds, whatever it might be. It's for those people that don't know where to start, that are looking for somebody that has expertise in that to provide them a framework on this is how you do it day by day to achieve that goal. So I think that's probably a better use case versus someone trying to do it themselves, because the platform, it can take some time to build it in. You're almost better off just scheduling out the calendar items yourself. It would take the same amount of time, right? But that being said, the one piece where it would be helpful for that person is the accountability piece, because then you can share that progress and have that accountability partner log in, and then they can see in real time what you've done, what you haven't done. So I guess that would be the benefit of building it out and then using it for your own goals that you build out yourself.
Right. So we'll be providing a link to your website and then the other social channels in our show notes, so people can find you online and find the On Track website. But what is the best way for someone to get in touch with you, Xan, if they like what they've heard, they want to talk to you or communicate with you?
Awesome. So definitely go to the website, which is startontrack.com, which Portia's going to share the link. So it's spelled a little bit differently. So it's probably best to just click that way. But probably the best way is on the website, once she shares it, is an email address. If you want to email us, we can schedule a demo. That's probably easiest, because there's some nuances to the platform that we're still trying to figure out how to communicate that efficiently. So kind of walking through a demo is probably the best way to do it and get a feel for how it could possibly benefit you.
Perfect. So, Xan, I want to ask you a few other questions, and I'd love to talk to other entrepreneurs, especially ones that are so experienced like you do. You've got a lot of great experience with startups and different businesses. What is your definition of career success?
Oof. So I guess I'll answer that the best way I can, because career for me, coming as an entrepreneur, I think kind of a corporate connotation, right? So going through that period that I had, where I had that business failure, I had that kind of moment where, where when my dad passed away, that was had a huge personal impact on me and how I view life, right? And I think the most important thing I learned from that was time is your most important resource, is by far your most valuable resource, right? And so I think for me, the definition of success is generating enough income to make yourself happy doing something that you love, but not, what's the saying is, you don't want to work to live, but you want to live to work, right? And so working is something that you enjoy so much that it's not viewed as work anymore, right? So I think my definition of success is not feeling like you're going to work ever, right? Is having that something you enjoy so much, and it doesn't take so much time up that your quality of life is impacted. So for me, that's kind of my definition of success, which I don't know if that's what you were looking for at all, because again, to me, career success has a connotation of corporate, and I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just kind of my perception of it.
No,
But to me, that's kind of how I've defined it, and I've reshaped my goals and the way I do things to completely move towards that definition of success, and just the way I leverage outsourcing, automation, just to really optimize the amount of quality time I have in my life. I think that's really kind of been the driving force behind how I've changed how I've done things.
That is perfect. That is perfect. And thank you for sharing all of that with us. You've shared some vulnerable moments with us today, and I appreciate you doing that. Something that, when you were just talking, it made me think again about accountability, with your business experience, to kind of take it back to an accountability question when we think about success. Yep. How does having co-founders help you with accountability? Because I mean, for me personally, I don't have any co-founders. I'm, a founder, CEO, and I have team members, but I've not had that co-founder experience. What is that like? And does that kind of, aid in accountability at all?
So I have had co-founders before, and most of them have crashed and burned miserably, right? And I actually, I'm one, I'm sure you're the same, where I always like to kind of have I do the instant replays all the time to kind of figure out like what's working, what's not working, why is it not, and so in the past, and I'll share an interesting story. In the past, the co-founders have always been like, we had this idea together, and it's like, all right, let's partner up and do it, right? There was no strategy behind why we were partnering up. There was no analysis as to whether our personalities fit and things like that. And so with OnTrack, I took some of that learning and approached it very differently. So I originally was just myself, and the end goal is to raise money, and I've always heard that VCs like teams rather than single co-founders, right? And so for those that don't know, VC stands for venture capitalists. So those are the folks that are investing decent amount of money to kind of scale these companies. This time around, I took a very interesting approach. So number one is I really took a deep dive on, and I'm eventually going to answer your question, but I think this is still interesting. But I took a deep dive on where my skill set was lacking, right? My skill set and maybe also personality, like what my weaknesses are. Like for instance, patience hasn't been and never will be one of my strengths. And so I purposely looked for people that complemented me from the standpoint of offset my weaknesses, had skill sets where I thought I was weak, and I intentionally went after people with those skill sets. I was looking for a diverse team. And so I got what I think is a fantastic team. And the other thing I will say is what we did, and actually my co-founders actually suggested this, I can't even take credit for, is we actually took 6 months to do it as a dating period where we acted as co-founders for 6 months with no expectations of anything. And we did team meetings and all this stuff. I had them sign a non-disclosure to make sure, and we got a chance to see how we work together, do our visions align, do our morals align, because I've had issues where I've had partners that were morally we didn't, ethically we didn't align, right? And so we got a really good chance, and I felt really good about bringing them on. So and so eventually we agreed to terms and we brought them on as co-founders. What I have seen, and this is interesting, I think you'll appreciate this, is so Angela is one of my co-founders. She's the first female co-founder I've had, and I don't want to kind of generalize, but at the same time, I think there are some differences generally between men and women and how they think and how they. And she has really pushed back on Gemini, probably at a lot of the right times, right? It is because Gemini, we do have, so Angela has more corporate experience, Jim and I have entrepreneurial experience, and so we're out there trying, we want to take these risks all the time, and Angela's like, hold on a sec, this doesn't necessarily make sense. And in retrospect, I was frustrated because I'm like, no, we got to move it. And like in retrospect, she's really pushed back at a lot of the right times. And so I think it points to the importance of a team. It points to the importance of diversity, right? Because, and I have arguments all the time with it, diversity is not just about, race and gender and things like that. It's about having people with different viewpoints. Now, usually people with different ethnic backgrounds will have different viewpoints, but it's so important to have all these people looking at problems from different angles,
Right.
and pushing back when necessary, so that you're not all you're not making decisions from just one lens.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what's been so powerful about that. But I think it's important that it's the right people, right? So you can't just have people pushing back. It's got to be the right people that are pushing back, so that it's for the right reasons. And I think that's really been my biggest takeaway from that experience, has been like, I think, if and when we're successful, it's because of all of us kind of working together and putting in our various inputs towards a central mission, right? We made sure that our missions and our visions align, but we're attacking it from slightly different angles. And that pushback at all the right times, I think, is really where the magic happens. And I think that's kind of how the accountability happens in that group, right? Is us saying, hey, no, let's make this decision together, and let's make sure everyone expresses their opinion on it. And then as a group, let's kind of handicap everyone's input in that. But that's been a really cool experience for me as far as that. So hopefully that answers your question. It was a roundabout way.
It does. I mean, that's very insightful. It sounds like you also have your built-in accountability partners.
Yes.
When it comes to your business, so you don't necessarily have to look as far outside to find that. So my last question for you, Xan, how do you think executives or professionals can get a positive edge in their career or their business?
So I guess the one thing I would say about that is just upskill all the time. And the one example I will give you, you mentioned in my bio, is, my daughter during the pandemic, when she kept missing the ice cream truck, had asked me, hey, can we build an app to track the ice cream truck? And my head as an entrepreneur was like, I'm gonna make this happen. I don't care what it means. I'm gonna make it happen. But then I looked at what it would cost. I'm like, I love my daughter, but not that much. And so that's when I took, not that I don't love her that much, but I was like, I can't pay that for something that we might not do anything, right? So and so that's when I took a class on how to, on this node coding class. And I gotta tell you, that was one of the most valuable things I've ever done. And it was like a $700 class. Not only did I use it to kind of automate things on my own business, but like now I have another business with my wife where we're actually building these no code apps for other small businesses. And like that class has paid for itself over and over. And I think the reason why that's so important is the world is changing so quickly, right? And so if you're not upskilling regularly, you can become irrelevant very quickly. And so, for instance, during the pandemic, right, in that first 6 months during the pandemic, the volume of e-commerce business increased about as much as it had in the previous 10 years, I think is what this, I apologize, but I don't have that quite right. But the point is, it increased really fast, right? Where, the first, 50% took 10 years, the second 50% took 6 months, right? And so you can imagine how quickly the need for technology increased during that short period of time too, right? And so if you don't have the right skill sets to adapt to that change, you're going to have a hard time finding your value, your value proposition in that new reality, right? And so I think it's upskilling, but upskilling strategically, right? What's the saying is, don't go to where the puck is, go to where the puck's going to be, right? So it's trying to figure out where that puck's going to be and setting yourself so that you've got the skill sets. It's actually thinking ahead, right? Because you want to make sure that you're that competitive advantage where you have skill sets that no one else has, but it's something that is, extremely needed, right? So digital marketing, online stuff, e-commerce knowledge, a lot of these businesses were scrambling if they just had a brick and mortar. How do I make my business kind of relevant in this new reality? And so they were looking for people, with those skill sets. So I think it's really just upskilling, but strategically upskilling.
Sam, you have shared a lot of wisdom with us today, and also some Wayne Gretzky quotes that I'm sure that our listeners can use it to be confident in their careers and their businesses. And we really appreciate you being with us.
I enjoyed it. I mean, it's always great talking to you. You've been a huge supporter of us, and anytime I can kind of help you out and help your followers, I'm more than happy to do so. I enjoyed it. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sam. This episode was brought to you by the Bravebird Career Alliance, the go-to membership designed for seasoned executives and ambitious professionals with everything you need for career planning, strategy, training, and support. Thank you again for listening to the Career 101 podcast. I hope you have at least one key takeaway that you can use in your own career. If you've enjoyed hanging out with us, please rate, subscribe, and share this podcast. Until next time, here's to your success.